It was just one sentence. One single sentence that changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I was in the kitchen, apron on, garlic sizzling in the pan, thinking about whether to use rotini or penne. Just a regular Tuesday. And then my daughter walked in, sat on the counter with her little legs swinging, and casually said something that shattered my entire world like it was nothing. It wasn't even a full sentence. Just a string of words that didn't make sense at first. Until they did. And then I couldn't unhear them. Couldn't unfeel them. And definitely couldn't look at my husband the same way ever again. Let me ask you something. What would you do if your child told you something about your partner? Something that made your stomach drop and your hands go cold? Would you believe them? Or would you protect the life you've spent years pretending is still okay? Because I had to choose. And either way, someone I loved was going to get hurt. If you've ever been in that kind of moment, where the people you die for put you in the middle of a storm you never asked for, please like this video. Drop a broken heart in the comments if you've ever had to act strong when all you wanted to do was fall apart. And if you want to hear more true stories like this, subscribe. Because not all betrayals come with lipstick on the collar. Some come from the mouths of children, and they hit harder than anything else ever could. My name's Macy Acevedo. I'm a wife. A mom. A stepmom. And on the night this all started, I was just making dinner. From the outside, you'd think we were that kind of family. You know, the ones that get matching pajamas at Christmas, post beach selfies with cheesy captions like "Sun," "Smiles," and "My Squad." And honestly, we were that family. At least online. Real life? Different story. There was me, Macy. 35. Stay-at-home mom turned freelance copywriter, mostly because it gave me an excuse to stay busy and not cry in the shower every other day. There was Dakari Ventura, my husband, father of my daughter Zora, and stepfather to Alaric. He's the type that walks into a room and everyone turns. Charisma is like a spotlight. Smile sharp enough to slice right through your gut. Then there's Zora Howe. 9 years old. Too observant for her age. Still mixes up her LS and RS, still wants me to tuck her in every night. And Alaric Anthony, 17. My stepson from Dakari's first marriage. Quiet, thoughtful, never says more than he has to. A good kid. We did family game nights. Taco Tuesdays. Birthday balloons taped to bedroom doors. We were good at pretending. But behind closed doors, things were quieter. Stiffer. Like every conversation had to pass through this invisible filter. Dakari started coming home later. His phone never left his hand, or the inside of his jacket pocket. He used to grab me by the waist when I cooked and whisper something ridiculous in my ear just to make me laugh. Now? He'd walk past me like I was part of the furniture. Our last anniversary, he forgot. Said it was work. Sent me a picture of a half-eaten steak and a hotel lobby like that made it better. No card. No flowers. No effort. I told myself I didn't care. Told myself I was over needing grand gestures. But the truth? I was starving. Not for romance, but for presence. For effort. For proof that I still mattered in the house I helped build. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring at the mirror for too long, trying to remember what I looked like before marriage, before motherhood, before I became invisible. Zora once asked me why I never wore lipstick anymore. I told her it was because I didn't have time. But the real reason? Because no one noticed when I did. Not anymore. And still, I kept going. Cooked dinner. Washed school uniforms. Laughed at jokes that weren't funny. Held it all together like women do. Because that's what we're taught, right? Smile through it. Protect the family. Put your head down and keep moving. Until something, or someone, forces you to stop. And for me, that someone was my daughter. Zora. The house was quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet. The everyone's tired of each other's energy kind. The kind where even the walls seemed to exhale. It was around 6:45. The sun was setting outside the window above the sink, one of those pale orange glows that made the house feel softer than it really was. I was standing at the stove, stirring a pot of spaghetti sauce with one hand and absent-mindedly chopping red bell peppers with the other. There was music playing low, something old, some Anita Baker song I always come back to when I'm trying to feel like myself again. Zora sat at the kitchen island, bare feet swinging under the stool, coloring a unicorn with 3 heads like it was totally normal. She had that serious little crease in her brow, the one Dakari always says she gets from me. I'd just added some oregano to the sauce when she spoke. Her voice didn't rise. Didn't sound scared or sneaky. It was just a statement. Flat. Honest. Unshaken. Mommy? I glanced over. Yeah, baby? She didn't look up. Kept coloring the 3rd head of the unicorn pink. I saw Daddy kissing someone who wasn't you. My knife stopped mid-slice. For a second, I thought I heard her wrong. I looked at her, same pink hoodie, same messy pigtails. But her voice had cracked something open. I felt my fingers go numb. The knife dropped from my hand and clattered against the cutting board. She looked up then, like she'd just asked me what was for dessert. Big brown eyes. No fear. No guilt. Just 9. 9 years old and holding a truth I wasn't ready for. The sauce started to bubble too hard. I reached to turn the heat down, but my hand missed the knob. It wasn't just the stove heating the room anymore, it was the sound of those words. Her words. Rattling around in my skull like a loose marble. I tried to sound normal. Like my world hadn't just shifted 5 inches to the left. What did you say? Zora blinked. I saw Daddy kissing someone. She had yellow hair. I don't think she's a friend. And just like that, the oxygen left the kitchen. I stood frozen, spatula in one hand, the smell of scorched garlic rising behind me. My mind couldn't keep up. I wanted to scream. To ask when, where, how. But all I could do was stare at my daughter, who was now reaching for a purple crayon like she hadn't just knocked the wind out of me. I forced myself to breathe. In. Out. One more time. Then I leaned on the counter because suddenly, my legs weren't fully on board with standing. Where did you see that, sweetheart? My voice came out too soft. Too careful. She shrugged. At the red restaurant. The one near your favorite nail place. We were in the car. I was reading my book but I looked up, and I saw. She said it like she was telling me about a cloud shaped like a bunny. And somehow, that made it worse. I stared down at the sauce burning at the edges of the pot. Watched a bubble burst and splatter onto the stove. Watched it stain. And something inside me cracked. Quietly. I didn't cry. Didn't yell. Didn't run to grab my phone and scroll through every lie Dakari ever texted me. I just stood there. Listening to my daughter hum as she reached for another crayon. And I realized, this wasn't just about a kiss. This was about all the little things that came before it. The slow fades. The missed moments. The silence that used to feel like peace and had turned into something else entirely. I thought about every time he said, "I'm just tired," when I asked why he wasn't in the mood to talk. Every time he left the room when I walked in. Every time he smiled at his phone but not at me. I felt the weight of it all settle on my chest. Like I'd been living in a house where the ceiling had been leaking for years, and I'd just now looked up and seen the cracks. "Did you tell Daddy you saw that?" I asked quietly. Zora shook her head. "No. He said not to tell you." My breath caught. I didn't let her see. I couldn't. I turned off the stove. Set the spoon down. Walked over and kissed the top of her head. She smelled like crayons and bubblegum and childhood. She looked up at me, still oblivious to the bomb she'd just dropped. And all I could think was, how do I protect her from the mess that's already in motion? How do I shield her from the storm that's already here, when I didn't even see the clouds forming? I wish I could tell you I acted like a mother who had just heard something devastating. I wish I could say I stormed into the living room, phone in hand, heart on fire, demanding the truth. But I didn't. I stood there, cleaning the already clean counter. Wiping the same invisible spot over and over like maybe, if I just kept scrubbing, the words Zora said would vanish with the smudge. That's what denial looks like, by the way. Not loud. Not explosive. Just quiet. It whispers, maybe you heard her wrong. It nudges, maybe it was a hug, not a kiss. And eventually, it bargains. Maybe she saw something on TV and confused it with real life. Because believing her meant I had to unbelieve him. And that's not something you do in one breath. That's something that breaks you in layers. Zora kept coloring. And after a minute, she said it again, this time slower. Like she wanted to make sure I really heard it. It was the red restaurant. The one by your nail place. She had yellow hair, Mommy. Really yellow. Like banana yellow. Banana yellow. What a detail. She wasn't making it up. This wasn't some childish imagination run wild. She'd seen something. And she remembered it. I mumbled something. Maybe thank you for telling me. Maybe nothing at all. I honestly don't remember. All I know is that I drifted into the bathroom a few minutes later, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. And that's when the flashbacks hit. The way Dakari started working late on Thursdays. The new cologne, that heavy, musky kind he never used to wear. The fitness coach he mentioned once in passing but never elaborated on. How he suddenly cared about macros and step counts and protein powders when 2 months ago he couldn't be bothered to eat breakfast. The voice in my head was louder now. That same voice I've silenced 100 times before. Macy, come on. You know. You've known. I tried to drown it out with logic. With exhaustion. With motherhood. He's just stressed. I'm not exactly easy to love right now. Maybe I haven't been paying enough attention either. And then guilt showed up. Loud, sharp, heavy. Was I too tired to see it? Too busy being a mom, a scheduler, a nurse, a grocery list machine. To notice my marriage falling apart? I remembered the night he came home late and I was already asleep. How I woke up when he kissed my forehead, but his lips felt colder than usual. Not because of the weather. Because of the distance. I remembered the new passcode on his phone. The one he set and said, work stuff, with a quick smile I didn't believe. God, how many things had I brushed off as just marriage stuff? How many signs had I trained myself not to see? I sat on the edge of the tub and stared at the floor like it had answers. And the worst part? Somewhere beneath all the fear, buried under the layers of anger and betrayal, there was relief. Because the distance between us finally had a name. A reason. A face with banana yellow hair. But that relief only lasted a second. Because then came the wave. The realization. If my daughter saw it, that means he didn't even care enough to hide it. Not from strangers. Not from her. Not from me. And just like that, the denial wasn't strong enough anymore. The cracks had spiderwebbed too far. And I felt it. The very first piece of my marriage breaking loose. Quietly. Completely. And without warning. I didn't say anything that night. Not to Zora. Not to Dakari. Not even to myself. But the quiet? The quiet was screaming. I went through the motions like everything was fine. Packed lunches. Brushed hair. Sat at the dinner table nodding along while Dakari talked about some client disaster that supposedly kept him late the night before. And all the while, my brain was flipping through memories like a Rolodex in flames. I couldn't sleep. That night, I lay in bed with my back to him, my eyes wide open, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. I waited until I heard his breathing shift, that deep, even kind of snore that told me he was gone. And then I got up. I didn't want to go looking. I really didn't. But curiosity isn't what drives you in those moments. It's survival. You need to know. Because not knowing makes you feel crazy. Knowing? At least then you can bleed in peace. I found his phone on the bathroom counter. No passcode. He must have gotten cocky again. Or maybe he never thought I'd look. He wasn't wrong. Until now. I didn't have to scroll far. There she was. Ariella Knox. Saved under her full name, which was almost more insulting than a fake one. No hearts. No nicknames. Just Ariella Knox. Like she was a dentist or a dog groomer. But the texts? Too many emojis. Too many "I miss you already" messages. One photo, not scandalous, but close enough. Her in a red dress. Smiling. Glass of wine in hand. The caption read, "Can't wait for next time." #wineglass fire winking face. And right beneath it? A reply from him, same. You always know how to end my week right. Winking face. 2 hearts. I swear my stomach turned inside out. I sat there on the toilet lid, clutching that stupid phone like it was radioactive. Trying not to cry. Trying not to vomit. Trying not to smash it against the mirror and scream loud enough to wake the kids. I didn't do any of that. I just shut down. Closed the messages. Wiped the screen with the edge of my shirt like I hadn't just found proof that the man I married had a whole other life. And still, some part of me wasn't done. I needed confirmation. From someone who wouldn't lie to protect him. Someone who'd seen what I hadn't. So the next morning, after Zora went to school and Dakari left for meetings, I found Alaric in the garage. He was elbow-deep in a toolbox, fixing up an old bike he'd been restoring for weeks. I stood in the doorway for a full minute before saying anything. "Hey, can I ask you something?" He looked up, cautious. Wiped his hands on a rag. "Yeah?" I hesitated. The words didn't want to come out. But I forced them anyway. "Has your dad ever been with someone else? Like, have you seen him with someone who isn't me?" Alaric's face did this thing. This twitchy, guilty little shift, like I'd just opened a door he'd been praying I wouldn't touch. He looked down. Fiddled with a wrench. Didn't answer right away. "Alaric." My voice cracked. "I need the truth. Please." He sighed. Deep and slow. Then finally, he nodded once. "Yeah. I saw him drop someone off once. Couple weeks ago. Late. I was walking home from a friend's house and saw his car parked outside that new apartment complex near the library." He scratched the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. She had blonde hair. Looked younger. You know when people say it feels like the floor drops out from under you? They're not lying. Because that's exactly what it felt like. Everything inside me just collapsed. I wasn't even shocked. Just exhausted. I whispered, "Thank you," and walked out before he could say anything else. And in my head, one question kept echoing, louder than everything else. How long have I been living in someone else's story while calling it my life? Because that's what it felt like. Like I was the extra in a movie where I thought I was the lead. Like I'd been putting up pictures in a house I didn't even own. Cooking dinners for someone who had already fed his heart somewhere else. And suddenly, I couldn't unsee it. Not the texts. Not Zora's words. Not the look in Alaric's eyes when he said, "Yeah." I wanted to scream. To confront. To destroy. But instead, I sat in my car, gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, and whispered to myself. Not yet. But soon. The thing about betrayal is, by the time you face it head-on, you've already rehearsed it 100 times in your mind. I didn't want a screaming match. I didn't want broken dishes or slammed doors. I wanted the truth. Raw. Ugly. Without the sugarcoating. So I planned it. Not like some dramatic movie scene. Just dinner. A quiet Tuesday night. The same spaghetti I never finished cooking a few days ago. This time with garlic bread. And silence as thick as the sauce. Dakari came home around 7:15. Loosened his tie. Kissed my cheek out of habit, the kind of kiss where the lips touch skin, but the heart is somewhere else entirely. Zora was already upstairs. I told him she wasn't feeling well, which wasn't a lie. She'd been quiet all day. Wouldn't even touch her juice box at lunch. We sat at the table like strangers who used to be something. He scrolled through his phone while I pushed penne around my plate like it offended me. Then I asked. Casually. Carefully. Where were you last Thursday night again? He looked up. Blink. Too quick. He swallowed. Work dinner. With a client. Why? I shrugged. Just wondering. You came home late. I didn't hear you come in. Keep my tone light. Pleasant. He smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. Yeah, it ran long. You know how these things go. And there it was. The lie. Smooth. Polished. Too easy. I let the silence stretch. Let him take another bite. Let him feel comfortable. Then I reached into the drawer beside me and placed 2 things on the table. A crayon drawing. And my phone, open to a screenshot from Ariella Knox's Instagram story. He looked at the drawing first. It was Zora's. A red building. A man. A woman with banana yellow hair. And a caption in the corner, in Zora's careful handwriting. I saw Daddy kissing her. His eyes darted to the screenshot. Ariella. In the same red dress. Same night. Same location. Wine glass. Caption, endless nights, endless laughter. Hashtag wineglass red heart. Dakari didn't say anything for a full 30 seconds. Just stared. His jaw tightened. Then his hand slowly reached for the glass of water next to his plate, like he could wash down the guilt. I can explain, he finally said. I didn't blink. Try. He ran a hand down his face. She was just a friend. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious. Wasn't it, Suppo? You don't know what it's like, he said quietly. To feel forgotten. To come home and... I cut him off with a look. Oh, I knew. God, I knew. I had been drowning in that feeling for years. But I never went looking for a life raft in someone else's arms. I wasn't the one who disappeared, Dakari, I said. You were. He stood up, opened his mouth to say something else. Then I closed it. Maybe because there was nothing left to say. Maybe because the silence finally spoke louder than his excuses ever could. I picked up Zora's drawing, folded it gently, and walked away. No yelling. No slamming. Just the kind of quiet that follows an earthquake. Because sometimes the real confrontation doesn't happen with screaming. It happens when the person you betrayed looks you dead in the eye and doesn't flinch. There was no grand exit. No suitcase down the stairs. No shouting match on the lawn. Just me. A quiet house. And a folded list in my hand. I packed his things while he was at work the next day. Shirt still smelling like cologne I never wore. Shoes I hadn't seen him in since the last date night we never took. The little things, cufflinks, belts, aftershave, they all felt like props in a play I didn't audition for. And when I zipped up the last bag, I didn't cry. I didn't second guess. I just set it by the door and texted him 4 words. "Your things are outside." He didn't respond. Not right away. Maybe because he knew this wasn't one of those times I'd take him back. Maybe because he finally understood this wasn't about rage. It was about reality. And I was done denying mine. That night, I made dinner again. Spaghetti. Garlic bread. Zora set the table while humming some song she made up. I watched her twirl around the kitchen with bare feet and messy hair, and for the first time in a long time, I felt light. No more walking on eggshells. No more waiting for a sorry that always came too late. Just dinner. Real, simple, warm. I read to Zora in bed without checking the clock. She fell asleep with her head on my arm and drool on my shirt, and I didn't care. I stayed there longer than I had in months. Alaric came downstairs later to grab water. We didn't say much. Just exchanged a look, quiet, knowing, like he could finally breathe too. And me? I laughed. Once. At some dumb meme on my phone. And it startled me. Because it was real. Not the forced kind you give to keep the peace. But the kind that comes from the bottom of your chest, from a place that hadn't felt joy in a while. Infidelity doesn't always break a marriage. Sometimes, it breaks the silence we've been too afraid to shatter. Sometimes it forces you to stop holding your breath and finally, exhale. If you've ever been betrayed by the one person who promised to protect your peace, leave a wilted flower in the comments. Because this space, this community, is for anyone who's ever had to choose themselves in a world that begged them not to. Like this video if you know what it means to rebuild from the ashes of disappointment. And please, subscribe. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who needs the reminder that your children deserve to see you whole. Not quietly falling apart. Thanks for listening. And wherever you are, whatever you're going through, please know, you're not alone.